What's up, my dudes? Welcome back to 1 Minute Shakespeare. It's Hamlet, Act 1. So Horatio and pals Marcellus and Bernardo are chilling on the battlements when they see the ghost of the king. And they try catching his attention, but my dude literally just ghosts them. Now back in Elsinore, we find out that Claudius is now king and that the previous king is dead, and then Hamlet actually wants to go to school, but he promises not to go to school because it's supposed that they need him back in Elsinore. And there's this dude Laertes, who's the son of Polonius and brother to Ophelia. He wants to go back to France. Now Horatio and Marcellus come back to tell Hamlet that they saw the ghost of his father, and then they decide all together to go to the battlements that night to see if they can find the ghost again. Before Laertes leaves, him and Polonius try to convince Ophelia not to fall in love with Hamlet, because his greatness weighed, his will is not his own. He may not, as unvalued persons do, carve for himself, for on his choice depends the safety and health of this whole state. And now Hamlet, Horatio, and pals go to the battlements at night to see the ghost again. Hamlet talks to the ghost alone, and guess what happens next? Claudius murdered the king and usurped the throne. Hamlet's not going to tell anybody, but it does make Horatio and pals vow to not tell anyone about the ghost. And that's the end of Act 1. See you in Act 2. What's up? It's Hamlet, Act 2. So Polonius gets his dude Reynaldo to spy on Laertes down in France, and Ophelia comes to talk to Polonius because she's upset that Hamlet might have gone mad. Apparently he grabbed her. So Polonius comes to the conclusion that Hamlet has gone mad with love sickness, and so he devises a plot, but we'll get to that later. In the meantime, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are in the house! Also, the King of Norway sends ambassadors to apologize for Fortinbras's threats and instead asks if they can have armies go through Denmark so they can invade the Poles. So Polonius' plan is to have Ophelia confront Hamlet while he hides behind a curtain, and there's no way this plan could ever go wrong. Then Polonius tries to talk to Hamlet only to be called a fishmonger and an old man. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern try to talk to Hamlet only for Hamlet to tell them that yeah, he knows that they were sent by the king. Then Polonius brings in a bunch of actors. And Hamlet gets one of these actors to recite a speech about the fall of Troy. And he is impressed. So Hamlet's plan is to have these actors perform the murder of Gonzaga. And then we're going to see if Claudius shows any signs of guilt. And that is the end of Act 2. I will see you in Act 3. What's up? It's Hamlet, Act 3. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern tell Claudius and the queen that the play that's going to go on is going to be pretty tight, and he agrees to see it. But in the meantime, him and Polonius are going to peep in on Hamlet and Ophelia. And this is where Hamlet gets into the whole to be or not to be speech about the futility of existence. Ophelia approaches Hamlet and he tells her to go to a nunnery, and she gets all sad and he leaves because women are sad. So Claudius and Polonius emerge from behind their little cloak, and Claudius decides that Hamlet's not in love, but Polonius is not convinced. They do agree, however, that they should send Hamlet to England. So Polonius gets this fucking amazing idea to hide in Gertrude's chamber and send Hamlet there after the play. So that evening before the play, Hamlet and Horatio get together and decide that they're going to watch Claudius to see if he shows any signs of guilt while he watches the play. And sure enough, in the murder scene in the play, Claudius fucking shits himself and leaves. So Hamlet freaks out, his little freak out, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern tell him to go to the Queen's chamber. Then Polonius tells him to go to the Queen's chamber, but he's just like, guys, leave me alone, and there's going to have to be a part 2. Hamlet, Act 3, Part 2, here we go. So Claudius is talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern about the shit in his pants, and he decides that they need to go to England right now! After Rosencrantz and Guildenpoop leave, Polonius enters and tells him, yo, I'm going to check out into Gertrude's room, I'll tell you what I learned about Hamlet. And then after he leaves, the king is beside himself. Claudius, get this shit, murdered the king, and now he's feeling guilty, so he sits down and prays. And Hamlet shows up, sees Claudius praying, decides this is the opportunity to avenge his father, but he can't kill him because he's praying and he doesn't want to send him to heaven, so he decides not to kill him at that moment. Back in Gertrude's chamber, Polonius, he's at it again, he's hiding behind the curtain. Hamlet arrives in Gertrude's chamber, is like, why do you want me here? She's like, you shouldn't be so mean to your stepfather, and he's like, fuck you, bitch, I'll be mean to whoever I want. And then he accosts her, and then she cries out for help, and then Polonius, great idea, this man's full of great ideas, he also cries out for help. So Hamlet, thinking that's his dad behind the curtain, draws his sword and stabs him. It's me, Polonius, I'm your dad. And Hamlet goes back to accosting his mom, and the ghost of his dad appears. And then this. Hamlet, Act 4. So Gertrude's telling Claudius that Hamlet's mad as fuck and that he killed Polonius, and this freaks out Claudius, and he decides to call in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and tell them to take Hamlet to England as soon as possible. So Guildenstern and Rosencrantz find Hamlet, ask where he hid the body, he's acting weird as fuck, and then he calls Rosencrantz a sponge. So Rosencrantz and Guildenpoop take Hamlet to Claudius, where he tells Claudius where he hid Polonius' body, and then he sends them off to England. Now secretly, Claudius is hoping that when they go to England, England receives his sealed letter and that Hamlet will be put to death. On their way to the ship, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and Hamlet encounter Fortinbras's captain, who tells them that they're passing through Denmark to invade the Poles. Meanwhile, Horatio and Gertrude are discussing Ophelia, and Ophelia comes in singing songs, and she is crazy! And what's this? Laertes is back from France. He arrives on scene with a mob, sees Ophelia going crazy, and declares that he wants to avenge his father's death, and Claudius has to calm him down just a little bit. And Claudius now receives word that Hamlet is coming home early. So Claudius and Laertes devise a plot to kill Hamlet with a poison-tipped sword. Then Ophelia drowns herself. See you in Act 5. Hamlet, Act 5, we're almost done! So two gravediggers are digging on a grave for Ophelia, but they don't know if that's fair or not because she's being buried in a churchyard and she committed suicide, and that's a sin, so what's up with that? And Hamlet and Horatio are just chilling there, right? And they ask the gravedigger who the grave is for, and he says it's his own grave, and they're like, that's not right. Then Ophelia's funeral procession arrives. So Hamlet and Horatio are hiding when Hamlet notices the body, and it's Ophelia that has died. Then Laertes jumps in the grave with her. And this pisses Hamlet off, so he decides to also jump into the grave with her, and he gets into a fight with Laertes. Then they're pulled apart, Claudius declares that Hamlet has gone mad, Hamlet runs off in anger. The next day, Hamlet tells Horatio how he got away from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He switched the sealed letters, and it was them that got executed. Then Osric shows up is it Osric or Osric? Osric shows up, tells Hamlet he's to fence with Laertes. And against Horatio's advice, Hamlet's like, alright, let's go. The match starts, and the king decides that if Hamlet gets the first hit, he drinks from the cup, which is actually poison. And how about we take this party into a part 2, because I'm running out of time. Hamlet, Act 5, Part 2. Here we go. The duel begins, Hamlet strikes Laertes, but decides not to drink from the cup. He hits Laertes again, but before he can drink from the cup, Gertrude drinks from the cup, even though the king tells her not to because it's poison. Back to the duel, and Laertes strikes Hamlet with a poison-tipped sword, and he draws blood. And in a scuffle, they exchange blades, and Hamlet wounds Laertes with his own sword. And this is when the queen dies. And Laertes dies too, but not before telling Hamlet the whole plot he conjured up with Claudius. Now Hamlet is mad. Hamlet gets up and stabs Claudius and forces him to drink from the cup. So Claudius dies, finally, but now it's Hamlet's turn to die, and then we're all sad. Hamlet tells Horatio that he's dying, he exchanges forgivenesses with Laertes. And fucking Osric comes back and tells Horatio that Fortinbras is here. And right before Hamlet dies, he begs Horatio not to kill himself and to instead tell his story. So Horatio's like, Fortinbras, I've got a story to share with you. But not before Fortinbras orders Hamlet to be taken away like a soldier. And that's it.